We are very excited. At this time, we have a very special guest with us. We had the privilege of meeting him on the Star Trek cruise number 2, Voyage 1, none other than artist J.K. Woodward.
Hi, great to be here, guys.
Thanks, great to have you.
Well, J.K., it's good to be able to talk to you again. And you just got back from another Star Trek cruise, isn't that correct?
Yep, good old number 3. And you know what? It doesn't get old. I have a great time every time. And in fact, I get home and I miss it every single time.
Excellent. Any highlights for you?
Well, nothing specific, but overall, having the Discovery cast there this time. Mary Chieffo was there. Jason Isaacs was there. And it was just, it was great to see them represented. Raka Sharma was there, who played the Landry, Lieutenant Landry character.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it brings a kind of excitement to it because there's nobody more enthusiastic than the Discovery cast. They make like every con better. They're new and they have a legitimate excitement about it, and they're well aware of what they're walking into. Where that wasn't always the case with the other cast while the shows were on. So they're coming in like right off a set. I mean they were literally wrapping and then jumping on a plane and coming out to the cruise. So there was a lot to talk about.
So they sounded real excited to be there on the cruise.
They were, and they engaged with everybody. They were right in the middle of the crowds, just one of the gang. They were acting like I do when I'm on these cruises, and just engaging with everybody and just kind of being there. And that's kind of that's an excitement,
Now, when we first met you on the cruise, we started talking and we talked Trek, and we were impressed because we do talk to a lot of comic book artists and celebrities, and they enjoy the work that they're doing, but you take it to another level. You really have a background and a passion and a love for Trek. Would you like to tell us how that developed?
Oh, sure. Well, I've been watching Star Trek since I was a kid. I grew up kind of poor, and so I didn't get to go to movies as often as I'd like to. So I was getting all my science fiction from TV, and there was no better time to be a science fiction fan for TV than the 70s, because you had all these crazy, like the Incredible Hulk, you had Buck Rogers in 21st Century, but my favorite was always Star Trek, and that was in syndication at the time, the original series. I couldn't get enough of it, even though there was only 3 seasons. 3 seasons, by the way, which equal like 10 seasons of what we consume today for media, because the seasons had like a lot more episodes. But I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. I enjoyed the animated series when I discovered that. I was in heaven. Love the animated series. Can't say enough about it. And then I was in high school when dating myself, but when I was in high school when Next Generation came out, and I remember the first time I saw the commercial for it, and I saw a Klingon on the bridge, I nearly lost my mind. And it just hasn't stopped. I love every iteration. I like some of them more than others, but I like every series, including the new one. When I heard about Discovery and what direction they were going with that, I was very excited. So it just hasn't stopped. And of course, the movies. I was never, in the 80s, the whole video craze started happening. Everybody was collecting videos before DVDs. And I never understood that. I'm like, just go out and see a movie. I'm not going to be a part of that. But Star Trek was the first time I actually started buying movies. So I made sure I had to have all of them. So I've always been kind of an obsessive fan, and it's always been that way with comics as well. So the idea of drawing Star Trek comics was almost more than I could bear, and it's something I hadn't actually thought of. I kind of kept my comics separated from Star Trek. My love of Star Trek was something different. But when IDW got the license and I had been working with Peter David on Fallen Angel, we were both very excited about the prospect of working in Star Trek. So I started with doing covers and worked my way into series and started working with the Tiptons. And, you know the rest of the story there. It's all been published, the Star Trek Doctor Who crossover, The City on the Edge of Forever, Meeting Harlan. I just couldn't get enough. And to this day, that's really all I want to do. I do other things, and I have done other things, and I've had a lot of other things published, but it always comes back to Star Trek because that's what I love. I love my work. I love talking about my work. I love art in general. But when you can mix that with sort of a Star Trek fandom, it makes it even something more special. And then I can reach out to people and talk to them both about art, both about my work, and also about Star Trek and connect with them on a different level with that.
That's fantastic. I mean, right in front of us now, we're looking at Fallen Angel. You're working there. 2005, you teamed up with Peter David. And when I look at this work, it's reminiscent to me of something that would be produced by Vertigo. It's very dark, yet you're shading, you're highlighting. It's very dramatic. Give us an idea of what it was like to work with Peter David, because he's another huge Star Trek fan, but he's multi-layered in what he create. What was it like working with the Fallen Angel project, and how did that develop further in your relationship with IDW Comics?
Well, I started with IDW on a CSI New York miniseries, and I was, I think, about 2 issues in. It was only a 4-issue miniseries. I had a day job at the time, and I was actually sleeping even less than I do today, believe it or not, just because I had to work nights on this book and then go to work in the morning. And I thought that would be the beginning and maybe the end of my comic career, or maybe I would work up to something. And then I got, around issue 2, I got a email from Chris Rael of IDW saying that Peter David was taking his creator-owned book from DC Comics, Fallen Angel, which originally it was published there. DC canceled it, but he owned the rights, so they were taking it to IDW, and he wanted me to draw the thing. I was amazed. I was a big Peter David fan. I love his Hulk work in the 90s. I've been a fan since the late 80s when he was just starting out. He actually told me, I was not familiar with the DC version. He actually told me about Fallen Angel, and I'm glad you said Vertigo, because this is exactly what I pictured. I pictured it was more Neil Gaiman than it was, Frank Miller or John Byrne or something, And so I had a vision of what it would look like. And then I saw the DC version, and that one seemed like it was kind of straddling between what Peter wanted and a superhero book, for better or worse. I just went in a much different direction. I just kind of followed what Peter wanted, and that's the reason it looks the way it does. I mean, the city's called Bête Noire, and it was filmed, which is French for Black Beast, I believe. But to me, I thought the method I should use, the mood I should create, would be something kind of carved out of shadows, as Peter described it. So I went with a very film noir look to the lighting and everything. I had everything kind of just swimming out of the shadows. And that's kind of how I pictured it. And I wasn't afraid to get a little abstract sometimes. I'm not too much, but a little bit expressive in my painting style. And I mixed in some, digital media along with the painting, which I never do now, because I decided I didn't like that. But at the time I was experimenting and I wanted something like that. And I think basically I was following Peter David's lead. This is how he wanted Fallen Angel to look. He didn't want like a superhero book. He wanted something else.
That's interesting. So it was you did something with that one that you will probably never do again. So we have this unique, brilliant artwork of yours in this.
Now, did conversations ever come up with you and Peter about Star Trek during this time period?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we whenever we were doing conventions, both doing it together, we'd try to get tables next to each other so we could kind of promote Fallen Angel. Which was a struggle for him. Like everybody wanted to hit. Everybody thinks Hulk or Aquaman, any of the other mainstream big 2 characters that he worked on. So Fallen Angel was a tough sale. So we always ended up sitting together, and yeah, we definitely talked a lot about Star Trek, and Doctor Who. He's a fan of both. In fact, when Star Trek Doctor Who was coming out, I thought he was going to be the guy to write it.
Oh, he's brilliant. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's a fan. It's always fun when you have creators that are fans of the projects. So how did you first get into the Star Trek universe then with IDW?
Well, what happened was I found out they had the license. I would love to say that they came knocking on my door and wanted me to do this, but I found out they had the license, and I begged for it, and I begged for it, and I begged for it, and at the time they were kind of just dipping their toe, I think, in it. They were doing small miniseries at best. And a lot of one-offs. They had when they started, they had a thing called like Captain's Log, where they'd feature that would be a one issue story where they'd feature a certain captain for that one story and have different artists and writers work on different issues. They had like Alien Spotlight, where they do a Romulan story for that Alien Spotlight, a Klingon one for the next one, whatever. But they were trying to keep it kind of one issue things to see what worked and what didn't work. And yeah, I didn't get anything right away, but I got covers. because IDW was always had that retailer incentive or a B cover or something, so they'd always need an extra cover artist. So that's kind of how I broke in. But the first full issue I ever did, and I can't remember which one it is. It's one of these two. It was either the Captain's Log about Pike, which I did with Keith DeCandido, or it was an Alien Spotlight that I did. Oh wait, no. Alien Spotlight was with Keith DeCandido. The other one I did was the Captain Pike story with Stuart Moore. I did them both around the same time. I did them back to back. I don't remember which one was first, but one was a Captain's Log and one was an Alien Spotlight. The Klingon story, it was Kang telling a story to the albino from the DS9 episode, and he was doing these flashbacks and telling stories within 3 different time periods, and Klingons are long-lived, so they were very different time periods in his life. So I got to do 3 different 8-page stories, and what I did was I did them all in a different art style, and it was a way of me kind of showcasing to IDW what I could do. I'm not just a painter. I could do a kind of Kirby style, or I could do, a traditional comic book style, or I could do something, really good in pencils. And so I did 3 different stories in 3 different art styles. I think that one was my favorite, but the Captain Pike story also, I mean, you never forget your first. Except I don't know which one was first, so I guess you do.
But you remember both of those.
But know what I appreciate about the Klingon issue is, especially working with Keith, is that there's no one I don't think that loves Klingons as far as writers go more than he does. And he goes in.
I know. And he's very well versed. And he was answering questions I had, and there's no bigger Klingophile than I am. But yeah, it was, and I would talk to him on the phone, probably more than he cared for. But when we were working on this, I would like, what if I did this? What if I did that? I was like kind of one of those collaborators.
If you like the Klingons, though, then I have to ask, what do you think of the Discovery Klingons?
Okay, this is never anything I'm comfortable answering. It's so, what I love is the Klingons always fascinated me, but they always felt a little homogenized, especially in Next Generation. They had the same outfits, they all looked the same. They all had the same haircut. So when Undiscovered Country came out, we saw different classes of Klingons. We saw a hierarchy. We saw different outfits. We saw a little bit of diversity. Not a lot of people reacted well to that. Not a lot of people liked the way the Klingons looked. A lot of people didn't like the outfits. I loved it. I didn't like the Pepto-Bismol blood, but that's the only part of that I didn't like. But I like the idea of showing the Klingons there were different classes. It's a complex society just like Earth. They're not all the same. So when I saw Discovery, they look different. But first off, redesigns are inevitable. The Klingons have been redesigned 4 times. It's going to happen. I would have preferred hair, but I love the way their heads looked. I love the I love the cone head thing. But what I like the most is they all had different symbols, different armor. They all the different houses, like the samurai. You would have different armor for different houses. You could identify them. And of course, this was a Klingon empire that hadn't been united, so it actually works in canon. That they look homogenized later when they're a united empire, as opposed to now where they're separated by star systems. I mean, you don't get much further than space. So they would develop differently and they would look different. And I kind of enjoyed seeing that kind of diversity in the Klingons, especially, in the pilot where you saw them all come together in holograms and you could just see how different they all were.
Yes. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. And you know what? It even makes sense that they get a little homogenized by the 24th century because they've been united for so long that they would develop culturally as a single culture. But back in this time, they should look like that. They should all be a little bit different. And it also makes it more interesting. And I love at the end of the second season or the first season how we got to see a part of Kronos that kind of looked like Times Square. It was kind of like the sleazy part. It was, but it was good to see something besides, the great halls. The same old sets. It was like, how do the poor Klingons live? How do the Klingons that don't have these great battles and don't grow up to be great warriors, where do they end up? And what are they like? So I feel like we got a peek into, what it means to be Klingon even more so.
It was the underside and they had all these other aliens there on Kronos too, who also seemed to be poor.
Yeah. You know what reminded me of the Lower East Side in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s. I mean, it's kind of what it was. There's so many different kinds of people there, and they're there because they have to be, but something fantastic happens and something horrible happens also. But it's just an interesting place. Yeah, you get all tattoo parlors and there are people, urinating in the alleys and stuff. But I mean, it's also an interesting place as a result. So you see the kind of Klingons we've never seen before. Because before this, all we saw, we only saw them in space. So we only saw the great warriors. Only the great warriors or soldiers. Those are the only people you'd run into in space.
Yeah, good point. Well, that's one of the things that we love about you being involved in IDW's Star Trek series is that you bring a passion to every comic that you work on. And the IDW 2020 just came out, Star Trek The Next Generation. Give us an idea of what the 2020 project is. Now, we didn't get the whole line of 2020 comics. We only got the Star Trek issue. But what exactly does that mean with regards to IDW's 20-year history?
Well, it's a celebration of just that. IDW is 20 years old now. And what they wanted to do was in all their comics, they wanted to go back 20 years to when IDW started and put the stories in that time. With the Star Trek specifically, you can't do that, but you can still go 20 years in the past. And they, I don't know if it was because of the new series coming out or whatever, but they landed on Picard. They decided that would be the story they want to tell. And it was a good story to tell because we don't know that much about Picard on the Stargazer. I mean, we hear him talk about it in an almost romantic way. So we know there are stories there. And also we wanted to talk about what it was like when he met Jack and who Jack Crusher is, for that matter, and what Beverly was like before she got married and had children. And it seemed like a no-brainer to tell this story. It happened to fit. It happened to be 20 years earlier from the pilot of Next Generation. So we got our 20 years. Yeah, maybe it's not 20 years from now, but it's still 20 years ago in a certain point of view. Also, it gave us the opportunity to pair me with Peter David again. And I had been working with him since 2004. When IDW was barely 5 years old. So there was that nostalgia aspect to it too. Because we haven't worked together in a long time outside of me doing some covers for some of his novels. We haven't worked together in a comic book since Fallen Angel. That was another aspect of kind of bringing it back to the past.
That's why we pulled out our Fallen Angels and started comparing and contrasting. One of the things I appreciate about your artwork is, now this is not a knock on Jim Lee or on Frank Miller, but when we look at some artists' early artwork to the later periods, what they're most known for, it almost looks like a different artist. You have to kind of find out where they started developing their style. I love that your style is consistent, but now it has more dimension and it's more dynamic.
Part of that was, it wasn't really my choice. I think artists, especially the eras you're talking about, the Jim Lee and the Frank Millers, they were allowed to kind of grow in different directions. I think now if you're doing something, it's very hard to change your style because you get do what you were doing before. That's why we hired you. But I'm glad you did notice a growth because that's kind of important to me. I was talking before about the Klingon book, how I tried different styles. I played with different looks, some more cartoony, some more traditional comic, because I always secretly wanted to do more than just photorealistic painting. I wanted to try out different things, but in a sense, I kind of got stuck doing this, and I'm kind of grateful for it because I think I've gotten better at kind of combining the things I like about traditional pen and ink comic drawing with a photorealistic painted style. I think I've come up with something a little unique. I think at first I felt like a gothic Alex Ross or something. It was just like a dark version of Alex Ross is what my style was kind of looking like a pale imitation and a darker look to it. I think I've developed into something more over time. I hope I have. I mean, you did notice a difference, so I guess I have.
Well, we also noticed your style in Mirror Broken. I mean that artwork was beautiful too. The way it was, to me, I saw it as sort of a dreamy style, more fantastical, like a fantasy world in the Mirror universe.
Oh, sure, yeah. And part of the reason for that, the Free Comic Book Day and the first issue were done fully painted in gouache. There was a mix-up with the deadlines for whatever reason. I usually get like 6 weeks to do a fully painted comic, and then somewhere around issue 2 it turns to 5, and it keeps getting shorter and shorter for whatever reason. When it happened this time, I came up with an idea. I had been talking to a colorist named Charlie Kirchhoff at Gallifrey one year. We were sharing a table, or we were at a table doing a signing, or whatever it was, and we were just passing the time and talking about stuff. And I remember he told me he has a method that he uses to color grayscale that works really well. And I didn't need that at the time, so I just kind of put that in the back of my mind. But when it came up, issue 2 had to be done a lot quicker. I asked if I could do it in grayscale in ink wash, which is considerably quicker, but it still has sort of that realistic style. And then I remember that he had said he could color grayscale. He had this method, and I wanted to see what he could do, so I handed off the colors to him. And we came up with something I think was pretty unique and much, much quicker. So the book was not delayed, which is always important. And I think that's the reason why I think we kind of stumbled onto something that was a little more, like you said, fantastic. And it was also fun just to paint all these characters, with all different bodies.
Yeah, to have them look. Oh yeah, the Picard with all the muscle and all the men with the bare arms, and they all had such great muscle definition.
Except for Captain Jellicoe, who we gave like stringy arms.
Yeah.
That was I think that was Scott Tipton's idea. He's like, give him really scrawny arms. It'll be funny.
So IDW's 2020. What are you most proud of about this book that you contributed to?
I think whenever I get to create characters, I enjoy it. The aliens in this book were not described at all. They were just named, and and I've worked with Peter before. When he wants to describe something, he'll describe it. Yeah, and you follow his instructions. When he doesn't, that's him letting you off the chain and say, go to town, do what you want. So I got to describe. I got to create a new alien species, which, if I ever get the chance, I'm going to use them in other Star Trek comics wherever I can, just so they'll feel more canon. I think I'm proud of that. I'm proud of this creature. The only part of that culture that was created was he described in detail what the building looked like where this took place.
Interesting.
So I stayed really true to that, and then I designed the culture, like the clothing they wear, the cups they were drinking from, everything based on what seemed to go with the building that Peter wanted. And I created the creatures that would inhabit that based on that as well. And I think we kind of came up with something that, yeah, I'm kind of proud of, and I would like to use these creatures again.
That's exciting. Now, does Peter? It's been said that the Marvel way of writing comics is to flesh out ideas and let the artist do what they want, and the DC way is to have every single detail outlined by the writer, and the artist has to follow suit. Does Peter actually go back and forth with those styles then?
Well, what you said is true, but it's true from a different time. Now everything is screenplay form, whether it be Marvel, DC, doesn't matter.
You mean like it's going to be a movie, screenplay?
Yeah. Well, it's full script. It's a comic book script, but it's comparable to a screenplay. Basically, you have panel 1 and a description. Sometimes, if you're, say, Alan Moore, it's very descriptive. If other artists are a little more, leave it up to the artist. But the dialogue's already written, so you know what these characters are thinking, feeling, what you have to do. You're not deciding that. The writer has already decided that. The Marvel method, the writer might say the character's sad here, the character's worried here, or something like that. Or they might not say anything. The most famous case of the Marvel method kind of going wrong, if you will, was Claremont script where John Byrne took it upon himself to this was for the X-Men. I think it was X-Men, one of the early Phoenix Saga X-Men, and he just drew this one panel. The description was Phoenix consumes a star, to just show how powerful she was and how scary her powers were getting. And he draws this one panel where he cuts to the population on a planet of that star that went out, looking up scared as their planet is being destroyed. And the second he drew that, Claremont said, well, now we got to kill her. We can't, she can never be redeemed from that. So these are things that happen with the Marvel method. It's much more of a collaboration. Had that been done as a script, which we get now, is you would have had panel descriptions. And if it didn't say cut to the planet where the population looks up in fear, the artist would never have drawn that. So I think the writers have a lot more control now. But as far as details, for example, those creatures, I was allowed to make them up. A lot of times too, as I'll, especially with the Tiptons, I'll collaborate before they write the script. We'll sit down and talk about if I have any ideas or where we want to go with it, and have like a meeting between the three of us and hash it out, and then they'll come back with a script. And I'll find out which ideas they liked and which ones I didn't, because the ones I didn't like don't make it in the script.
Oh, and another thing that Nayar wanted to ask was about the way you did Beverly Crusher in this 2020 story. That looked like a costume from an old Playmates doll, right?
That's exactly what it was. Yep, that was that was the cadet. Yeah, the cadet outfit.
Oh, because she was a cadet. It was the old cadet outfit from Playmates.
Whose idea was that?
I'm not sure. That was actually in the script. So I'm not sure. That feels to me like it was either Peter David or John Van Citters from CBS. That sounds like something he would. John Van Citters at CBS is responsible for the. I don't know what his actual title is, but he works for CBS Consumer Products, and he's the guy we always check with. But he's a bigger Star Trek fan than all of us, and he always has those deep cuts ideas,
which we love. We love seeing all these little homages to the past, or Easter eggs, or things that just show that real fans are behind this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, pretty much everybody that's working on Star Trek now, as far as in the comics anyways, as far as I know, they're all fans. I talked to not just the Tiptons, but Mike Johnson a lot. He's been a fan as long as I have. Like I said, the people at CBS, been Star Trek fans their whole life. So it's kind of exciting to work because, like, even if you're not working with these people, you would still be talking to them about Star Trek. I mean, that's kind of how we all are. That's
fantastic. And you have so much going on, too. You have raffles. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay, so on the cruise, I did I do the artwork for the poster. I don't know if you knew that. And
we have one hanging up in our bathroom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, signed by you. Yeah.
So every year I hand paint everything. I don't do anything digitally. So I bring the original with me on the cruise, and I leave it in the gallery, and we put it up for silent auction. And at the end of the cruise, there is a live auction, and if somebody outbids whoever bid in the silent auction, you can give them the opportunity to outbid it. Anyways, it's always done for charity. I believe the cruise you guys were on, it was for NoKidsHungry.org. This year, it was Planetary Society, so I had Robert helping me kind of promote this thing. And not only were we auctioning off the original art for the poster, we were auctioning off his ears from Orville, because he played a character in Orville. And he auctioned off his prosthetic ears. Anyways, we raised over $4,000 for Planetary Society, which was great. But the problem was I had a bid for like $2,400 over, and the guy never showed up from the silent auction. So even though I made good money for the charity on that original artwork, it just felt shitty because I really wanted, I was so excited about how much I made, and like, once that guy backed out, the second bid was so much lower. I felt bad about it, even though without saying the amount, it was nothing to sneeze at. It was a good bid. So I decided that I'm going to take the cover for 2020, this issue, the original artwork, and instead of doing an auction, I'm going to do a raffle. I figure I think we can raise more money doing that because more people will participate, because $5 isn't too much to ask as opposed to $3,000, to get the cover. So everybody has a chance to win this thing.
That's great. Now, how can our listeners get involved?
Well, next week, I believe Wednesday, I'll make an announcement on my Facebook page. That's The Art of J.K. Woodward on Facebook. Just look that up. I'll make an announcement with instructions on how to buy a raffle ticket. I'll show the original piece. A week later, giving people enough time to get as many raffles, I'll print out all the receipts, and I'll do a live video on the same place, the Art of J.K. Woodward Facebook page. And you can watch me reach into the bucket and pick out a name. And we'll find out together live who won it. Then all proceeds will go to Planetary Society, and hopefully I'll make that $2,400 I really wanted to make and get it back to them. I'm obsessed with that $2,400.
That's exciting. Do you have any other convention appearances coming up?
Yes, actually, in a couple of weeks I'm going to a Doctor Who convention here in LA, so I don't have to go too far. That's the Gallifrey 1. I don't know if you're a Doctor Who fan, you've probably heard of that. I'll be doing some panels there and also doing some art giveaways. After that, in March, I have C2E2 in Chicago, which is one of the bigger Comic-Cons, so you can find me there. I'll have a table and, of course, be at the bar. And after that, in April is the Greater Philadelphia Comic-Con. I'll be there. As far as the rest of my schedule, everything's still in flux after April, so I don't know about the rest of it, but that's everything till April.
But you're going to be pretty busy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm busy even if I'm not traveling, but but yeah, traveling. Yeah. I usually do about one a month.
Now, we enjoy listening to your podcast. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's called Go Trek Yourself, where my buddy Daryl and I, it started out with just me and Daryl getting drunk and talking about Star Trek. We kind of tightened it up a little bit so we have themes. And it was started just to talk about Discovery. We started a year before it came out, and we speculated and talked a lot about every bit of news we heard about the show. And once it started, we started reviewing it. And in between seasons, we usually find an episode and a topic, and we try to connect it to the other Star Treks. And we always have themes. We also have a third member that is now on, Holly Amos. I met her. She's an archivist at CBS when I first met her. She's a living encyclopedia of Star Trek knowledge, so she really kind of helps us keep it together so we can just have fun and be goofballs. And we were doing it once a week for a while. It would show every Friday. We're going to get back to a weekly schedule. We've been off for a little bit because whenever I get busy with comic books, I take this hiatus. But we should be back weekly. It's on the Taylor Network of podcasts. You can find it on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It's everywhere.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Any final words?
Oh, except for at C2E2, I am donating a cover for Manifest Destiny. If you've ever seen that, it's a Star Trek book from the ongoing series that features Klingons and Anton Yelchin as Chekhov. I've been holding this piece for 3 years because this book, he died about 3 weeks after this book came out. So I wanted to hold on to the original for a long time, but I'm finally going to let it go for a charity auction at C2E2. It'll benefit the St. Jude's Hospital for Children. So if you're at C2E2, bid often, bid high.
Well, we look forward to hearing from you again, and we will keep supporting your work. We're huge fans of yours, and we're honored to have you on our podcast. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.